Welcome to another episode of The Only Playbook. The offseason is officially upon us. This is episode 46. Just going to talk about news around the NFL, coaching hires, what that is going to behold for implications for these teams. Again, I am Sweetcar. Joining me virtually because of this crazy ice we got going on outside is Shovit and Shishot. What's going on, guys?
It is cold out here. It's so cold, man. It's like freezing rain.
It was hot yesterday. It was hot.
Yeah, it was like 80 something yesterday, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, it was hot. Like I walked outside and I was like, I'm wearing too many clothes.
Dude, weird. It's freaking freezing outside. I had to defrost my car on the way to work, leaving work. I had to scrape the windshield. I mean, this shit, like I left Nebraska for a reason. I'm not trying to do that shit again, bro. So it was a pain in the ass, but I don't know. I think that's going to mean that means that at least I get to come home early from work and maybe I don't have to go to work tomorrow. So fingers crossed. We'll see. Yep. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, so much to talk about. Football action is over, but news and headlines and everything that's going to impact next season is all of the meat and potatoes of what we want to discuss. Obviously, if you've enjoyed our content thus far, we're everywhere. You should know that. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at The Only Playbook, all podcast platforms, everywhere you can listen to a podcast, Spotify, Anchor, Google, Apple. And obviously, if you're watching on the YouTube channel at The Only Playbook. So please like, subscribe, tell your friends, leave a review, anything, everything that will help spread the word. Because that's all we want to do is bring you the best news from NFL information. So with that being said, guys, so many teams came into the offseason basically in a flux. They fired their head coach. They really wanted to head in a completely new direction, etc. Let's jump into these teams that have fired a coach, lost a coach, and now have filled that vacancy and kind of what that highlights and kind of the implications of that long-term heading into next season. Where do you guys want to start?
The first hire was the Chicago Bears, where they got rid of Matt Nagy. Finally, he had to go. Say what you want about him, but that we knew that from towards the halfway of the season, he had to leave, and he was replaced by Matt Eberflus, who was a prior linebacker coach, coach for the Colts, and a good defensive coach for the Colts. The Colts were 30th in the league prior to him starting, and went up to climb to 10th in terms of points allowed, 11 in yards allowed. So he's worked with some great players. Leonard, Darius Leonard, DeMarcus Ware, Sean Lee. So he's a good fit if you want your defense to be better. But in terms of whether this was a right move for the Chicago Bears, I'm not sure I'm convinced in that sense. I think that they definitely needed to improve on their offense. And I don't know if this coach will allow Justin Fields and that team to be better than they were last year.
Okay, yeah, solid points. Eberflus, I think that's how you say his name, yep. Is different than Matt Nagy in one big part that matters a lot, and that is to adjust. Matt Nagy did not like to adjust. He was just known as a stubborn guy who was just always wanting to run his schemes. He didn't trust his coaches. He didn't give coaches the freedom. He kind of just said, this is my way. This is how we're going to do it. If we crumble, which we will, we're going to do it my way. So, that is just a toxic environment. We know that this day and age, there's no room for that anywhere, especially as a head coach of a $1 billion franchise, right? Or however much dollar franchise. That's just not acceptable. He was given too many chances and it didn't work out. However, during this interview process, the Bears selected Eberflus and they confirmed that they wouldn't have this problem going forward with him. He has openly mentioned that he's going to play to players' strengths. He's going to use, certain gadget players that we like to see the Bears use. However, they just disappear after a while. You're like, what happened to that guy? And then he just doesn't show up. He scores like whoever it is may score like 2 touchdowns in a game, and then he won't get any targets for like 6 weeks. So Eberflus has made a statement saying he will play to his people's strengths. And when I say people, I don't mean just players. He's talking about his coaches as well. He's giving coaches a lot more freedom, and he wants to build this offense around Fields. So these are all the things that he's actually vocally mentioned. He wants to build this offense around Fields. And, that was a big concern. We were like, Andy Dalton's coming in, Fields coming in, Andy Dalton's coming in, Fields coming in. It was just, there was no trust value with Matt Nagy. And I think Eberflus is just going to eliminate all of that. And he's like, we're gonna run this. We're gonna run this way, and I'm willing to adapt. And that's just on the offensive side. This guy's a defensive coach, right? He's a defensive coach, and he loves that Tampa 2 style, that the old Lovie Smith style that they used to use in Chicago. But he's also adaptable on defense, right? So Indianapolis had been running this 3-4 offense for years under Chuck Pagano, and they didn't have this like Aaron Donald styled penetrating force. So what did he do as soon as he got there? He's like, all right, we're going to get rid of this whole position as a whole. We don't need it, Aaron Donald. We're going to put 2 players in that spot to penetrate up the middle. No joke intended. However, it worked. It ended up working. They Shovit mentioned some stats, but here's one stat that matters quite frequently, or intensely, I guess. They were piss poor in run stopping before he came into the picture. He's turned this franchise around, which was in the 20s, lower 20s as far as run stopping goes, and now they rank 8th at the end of last year. So he's made heaps of changes along the way, and that has led them to, as Shovit mentioned, being the 10th ranked team as far as points allowed. So, anything is better than Nagy, and anybody is acceptable in my book if they're willing to adapt.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a lot of good points. Shovit, my initial thoughts were the same as you, in the sense that this franchise has found, or they think they found their future quarterback, right? And so it's really, really imperative that they have coaches and people in place to see that through. Whether Fields is the future or not, it still remains to be seen, but there's a lot of promise. Obviously a top 15 draft pick and all of the success in Ohio State. So last year, like you mentioned, Shishot, like they were teeter-tottering between a rookie that they wanted to give the reins to, but also with a veteran that they knew would just be able to get the job done. So it was like a team not really understanding where they were headed. Are they rebuilding, trying to build with this quarterback for the future? Or are they still trying to like scratch and claw to some wins and try to make that 7th seed? So I think the interesting thing about the Chicago Bears is not only do they have a brand new head coach now in Matt Eberflus, because he's defensive minded, he is obviously going to have to delegate the offensive side of the ball to the new head coach, the new offensive coordinator that they hired, Luke Getsy, who obviously came from the Green Bay Packers in the division, who was a quarterbacks coach there, right? And I mean, say what you will about that. I don't think there's a ton to coach when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers, but also being around Aaron Rodgers, knowing kind of how he prepares, his mannerisms, what leads to him being successful, there's got to be something that he can take away from that and kind of relay that to Justin Fields. So I think that's important. And then obviously the GM that they hired, Ryan Poles, who was, I think, in charge of player personnel for the Chiefs when they traded up and drafted for Patrick Mahomes. So there's a lot of guys in play with this franchise now that have seen and visualized quarterback talent and been able to have that come to fruition. So I think you have, again, the backing of a guy with Mahomes, the backing of a guy with Rodgers. You have all of the talent there to delegate, allow Eberflus to, run that defense and bring back that, Bears defense that people were so scared of before. And again, let Luke Getsy and then the rest of the gang coordinate with Fields and kind of see where that goes. But I think that's the biggest thing, Shishot, is when you're hiring a guy that's minded one way or the other, or, they're known for one side or the other, it's really important that they still remain a really good leader, right? Because at the end of the day, like we've experienced with the Vikings and Mike Zimmer, you can't just be defensive minded and then just expect the other side of the ball to do what they do. You're still the leader. You're still on the chain of command, and you're still higher than the offensive coordinator, right? So it's still your job to make sure that what's needing to happen on the offensive side of the ball happens. But the day-to-day is obviously run by the offensive coordinator. So that's the kind of stuff that you look for in this day and age, in my opinion, for a head coach. And, whether this is the right hire, Shovit, like you mentioned, it remains to be seen. But the kind of the GM, the offensive coordinator that they've gotten, I think sets the stage for at least the fact that they're attempting to build around Justin Fields.
The coolest thing about him is the personnel and the culture needed to be changed in the Chicago Bears. And one thing that he implemented when he was the Colts linebacker coach was he would give out tie-dyed shirts whenever the players got a pick. So it was red, and if they got a pick and they scored a touchdown, they would, wear the red tie-dye shirts and blue if they just got a takeaway. So it's like things like that, like the little things that influence someone and sort of motivate the players. So in that aspect, I think he is a good hire in terms of motivating and personnel and culture change.
Yeah, it's obviously again a franchise that got a new head coach, got a new general manager, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and special teams coordinator, right? So if you want to look at a franchise that's completely done a U-Haul in 180, it's the Chicago Bears. So I mean, I think your guess is as good as mine what next year is going to look like for them, because again, it's a complete overhaul. But at least having a guy that you know could be the guy of the future from a quarterback perspective really, really helps a new regime, right? Because then you can build around that guy as opposed to trying to find or hit on a quarterback of the future. So, yeah, I mean, again, the Chicago Bears, obviously, Matt Nagy, one thing I wanted to highlight with all these coaching hires is just interesting to look at the way the league is headed in terms of the age and how young a lot of these new hires have become. The Chicago Bears actually went in the opposite direction with the trend. Nagy was 43 and Eberflus is 51. But again, still younger than, I feel like even 10 years ago, you looked at head coaches and a lot of them were in their 60s or even 70s and shit. And it was just, again, a new era of football. So that's going to be a revolving theme with these new coaching hires is how much younger these teams have gotten. But the next team on the board, the Denver Broncos, who have fired 63-year-old Vic Fangio, was not getting the job done, and they have hired 42-year-old Nathaniel Hackett, who was the Packers offensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021. Obviously, when you're a coordinator, again, of a team that has Aaron Rodgers, you always wonder, like, is it the coordinator or is it just the fact that Rodgers is really fucking good? But again, despite all of that, he's going to be a first-time head coach. It'll be really interesting to see the direction in which this Denver Broncos team heads, because their defense was so stout last year, so young, and we felt like even this year, this is a team that is one quarterback away from contending for the Super Bowl, right? They have the weapons, they're running back with Javonte Williams. So this is a team that now has hired a offensive-minded head coach who is young, innovative, and now they're going to probably be trading for a possible quarterback. And again, obviously the rumors are swirling that Aaron Rodgers is on the trade block. So what better fit than Nathaniel Hackett gets his quarterback into a Denver system that now has already a stout defense? I mean, obviously just reading through the tea leaves and pure speculation, but what are you guys thinking about Nathaniel Hackett here in Denver?
Yeah, I think it's a solid pick. I think it's a little bit of trying to get Aaron Rodgers and maybe even Devontae Adams.
Yeah, package those duos. Yeah,
package those guys to try to come into Denver. Although I don't know if since that split, I don't know if he wants to go into the West Coast anymore. But that's a different segment itself. But I think that Hackett has a great, I guess, resume compared to everybody else in terms of win. With Matt LaFleur, I mean, winning 39 games in that 3-year tenure is impressive. Allowing the Jaguars with Blake Bortles as your quarterback, and he was the quarterback coach there, allowing him to succeed in as best as Blake Bortles could have done, and that's absolutely terrific there as well. So this is a solid hire. Broncos have been a good defense in the past 3 years, although that hasn't correlated to a winning record for Vic Fangio. However, and the offense is what was lacking, right? What's going to happen with Teddy Bridgewater is Drew Luck. And so this kind of puts them in that right direction of making that offense a core front of their team instead of just their defense that we've come to see. So I think it's a good hire. Fun fact, he's actually a hip hop dance instructor. I don't know if you guys knew this or not.
I'm not going to believe this until I see it. I need to see some videos of him.
I wonder. So I was thinking of what that means. I'm like, maybe like the touchdown celebrations will just be spectacular for the Denver Broncos. Like
every time they score, they just show the camera Nathaniel Hackett. He's the guy that does the celebrations for
How awesome would that be?
I'm just imagining like some Remember the Titans shit where like pregame he's just got the whole team during their warm-ups doing like a freaking simultaneous dance and shit. But dude, like we talked about with Eberflus and his unique tie-dye shit, right? Like this is the kind of stuff that I think makes coaches stand out, because everybody that's interviewing and gets hired for a head coaching job, pretty sure they have the resume to be able to even get the interview that they can coach, right? They have the resume. It's always about what makes you stand out. Why are you different? Why you versus the next guy? So I think those little things are so important.
Yeah, for at least for the players. Like it might not be important for the GMs and other coaches, but at least to gain the players' trust. Okay, so I think this is a good hire. I think this is one of those scenarios where, like, Chauvin mentioned, they've been a good defense. Not even just for the last 3 years. Ever since I've known the Broncos, they've just always had a good defense. They're kind of like the Ravens in that sense. They focus a lot on not allowing points. However, Patrick Mahomes doesn't care how many points you want to allow. all these other guys, newer guys, they don't care how many points they're going to allow. They're going to score. There is no good defense to the perfect pass, and we're developing quarterbacks all throughout the league that are just turning out to be like miraculous. Like if you just take Herbert, like even 20 years ago, he would have won like 6 MVPs. You know, it's like that type of skill level is now the norm. And what do you do to adjust for that? You don't try to stop that. You try to overpower that with a better offense, right? So yes, and what better offense than somebody that has sat next to Aaron Rodgers for at least the last 3 years and watched his every motion. You know, Aaron Rodgers was already great before he came into the picture. He was the quarterback's coach in Jacksonville. And when they hired him from Jacksonville, Aaron Rodgers on a tweet was like, marvelous coach or something like that. Yeah, he said something along the lines of, he said, fantastic coach, really good teacher of the game. So like, this isn't an Aaron Rodgers effect kind of a situation. This is the perfect guru for somebody that has already mastered the art, which is Aaron Rodgers, right? So it's like he watched Aaron Rodgers and he just was like, hey, you throw for 3 touchdowns, let's make you throw for 4 touchdowns. Or like, you're getting older and you need to, protect yourself more. Let's have you scramble this way a little bit more. Like, it's those adjustments that he's been doing. And Aaron Rodgers has been vocally thankful of him and he appreciates him a lot. So that's saying a lot because Aaron Rodgers doesn't just give out, green flags just because he has to. He's a very much open-minded guy. He will tell you if this guy sucks, I don't want to work with this guy. He's very open about stuff like that. So for him to praise a quarterback or coach this much, it means something, right? Like he said he's a good teacher. He's a guru. So, so I trust this. I trust this hire quite a bit. All they need is that quarterback. And like you guys mentioned, what better way to lure Aaron Rodgers to a place that he would, want to be at than just have somebody that he's respected for this long. And, the whole Matt LaFleur thing, that can get eliminated here. There's always over the last 2 years, it's been like, is LaFleur doing this or is Aaron Rodgers doing this? Like, who's the real guru here? Well, it's Aaron Rodgers. Matt LaFleur might be great in whatever he does, but Aaron Rodgers still has to throw the ball. And after saying all that, this guy, if he just brings in Aaron Rodgers and that bonus point of bringing in Devontae Adams, this team becomes unstoppable. They already have the weapons that can do a little bit of everything on every field of play. They have the deep threat. They have the quick slant guy. They have the guy that can do it all. They have 2 good running backs as of now, and they have reputable, formidable tight ends, right? So this is a perfect hire. Like I couldn't have wanted anything more for this team. So I'm happy they did this.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, anyone that goes into coaching the Broncos are in a good position because of their cap space. They have about $50 million, and I know that's probably going to be gone if you hire guys like you get guys like Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. But they also have 11 draft picks, so they're in a position with their squad that they have now to definitely have a strong future for them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think you guys are spot on. I mean, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, it's interesting because even last year, it felt like when Rodgers was hinting that he wasn't coming back, Adams almost all of a sudden started hinting the same thing, right? So there might be more truth to this package deal than like even anybody knows right now. And so, I mean, you think about a package of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what team in the NFL would not instantly probably become at least a 7th seed in the playoffs in either conference if they traded for Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams? I don't think there's a single team that would not. So again, that's going to be a win-win for every team. But like you said, a team that is literally a quarterback away, or so they feel, again, getting a guy like Nathaniel Hackett really paves the way for that perennial or possible reunion. But again, Aaron Rodgers, weird dude, man. He could literally just retire. Who knows? So regardless of Aaron Rodgers, the Broncos now put themselves in a position to either trade for other guys like Russell Wilson or other veterans that are on the market, maybe even a Kirk Cousins, or they can now draft a quarterback for the future, knowing that a quarterback that they draft is not going to take up as much salary cap. And with all that cap space, any other deficiencies in any positions that they have, they can solidify. So yeah, you're looking at a team that is built like a perennial Super Bowl contender, because again, we've talked about this in the past. Either you have a Hall of Fame quarterback or you have a really good defense and a quarterback typically on a rookie scale contract. So it'll be interesting to see if the Broncos can't hit on one of the big names via trade or free agency, who they end up drafting and kind of which way that direction heads. But interesting time for the Denver Broncos. And yeah, like you said, I'd be super excited because this is a team that as long as we've watched them, have always had a pretty good defense to a damn near great defense. So even when their offense was good, I don't think it was because they had a quarterback's or they had a coach or a quarterback's coach or anybody that had, I think, the next level offensive mind that Nathaniel Hackett has, like even when they got Peyton Manning and stuff. So I think this is just going to be such a change of scenery for any Broncos fans or people that have watched the Denver offense over the last decade or two, the way they play their offense, the way that, they rely on their defense. It's just complementary football, but now they can literally be a run and gun offense and still be that dangerous on defense. So look out for the Broncos, I would say, in 2022 and 2023. So let's jump to the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans were obviously just such a complete shit show from a heading into the season this year situation with the Deshaun Watson news. You couldn't even name probably like 10 guys on that roster because they were just basically filling roster spots with guys that basically they could just put on the field for the sake of putting on the field. So it was a very interesting time for Houston. Obviously, we talked about Davis Mills a lot. They drafted a quarterback because they didn't know what was going to happen with Deshaun Watson. They had a quarterback in Tyrod Taylor that was supposed to be their bridge quarterback till they figured out what happened with Watson. But Tyrod Taylor got hurt, wasn't cutting it. And then Davis Mills, the unknown rookie quarterback from this draft class, comes in. Obviously, it's not like the Texans were destined to succeed or anything, but definitely outplayed what his expectations were. So, now you basically relieve David Culley of his duties. He was 66 years old, and they did get a little younger, but again, it's not substantially younger, and it's not really changing from that big of a standpoint. But Lovie Smith, obviously a household name, a guy we've heard around the NFL with the Bears, spent the last 4 seasons with Illinois, coaching college football, 3-time head coach with the Bears, the Bucks, obviously with Illinois. And, back in 2005 with that Chicago Bears team, he was a former coach of the year. So again, the prestige is there. The track record is there. The resume is there. And I think it's interesting that a team that really still is searching for an identity hires a coach that at least is established, right? Because you could go 2 ways about this in a sense. You could bring in a young guy to help, build a brand new identity and culture. But I saw, the interview with like Kevin O'Connell, he talks about key players on the team that he wants to collaborate with, right? And you bring in a young guy to the Texans. I'm like, who the fuck is a key player on the Texans that's young that you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to turn to that guy and me and him are going to talk a lot. There's nobody like that right now, right? On the Houston Texans. So I think it's really interesting that they did bring in a guy that doesn't need to go in there and find players to start to build around. It's a guy that's already has his own foundation. He's obviously got a way that he coaches because he's a 3-time head coach. So somebody who already knows what the hell they're doing is an established head coach, I think is an interesting hire for the Texans. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, interesting is probably the best way to put it. This guy, he was a defensive coordinator, a household name. We know he went to the Super Bowl with the Chicago Bears. So definitely someone that you know of. However, I look at what Lovie Smith has done for the Houston Texans as far as their defensive just track record from last year. They were 27th in points allowed and 31st in yards allowed with Lovie Smith as a defensive coordinator. So, I mean, as far as like maybe as a person and a leadership role that he provides is probably far from none and far from others. And he just maybe provides that, but it's strange when I see a team that struggled in defense. What they didn't struggle with takeaways. They were top 10 in takeaways last year. And it seems like that's kind of what they were preaching, like go get the ball. And that's what their main focus was. But to see a team that wasn't as good in defense last year hire, move up a defensive coordinator to the head coach position is interesting. And I'm just curious to see where they would go. Lovie Smith has questions with Deshaun Watson. Looks like he's going to go. At least he's got a solid foundation with Davis Mills, who looks like he's going to be the quarterback of the future for now and to at least for next year for the Texans. He probably was the best rookie quarterback last year, in my opinion.
Maybe outside of Mac Jones.
I would argue that he was better than Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones was he just fit with that scheme, but I think Davis Mills proved that through key games against the Rams, against the Chargers, that he could lead that team. So, I mean, it's a toss-up. But, yeah, it's an interesting hire. I'm curious to see what the Texans will be like moving forward. I actually think that they're going to be a lot like what they were this year. I don't see any big changes in terms of their record or because of this hire.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing here is like coaches can only do so much, right? Like you still need the personnel, and they're lacking heavily on many levels as far as players on the field. I sense they will improve. I do sense that because I think they're going with a more of a holistic approach. Like everybody get in a circle, hold hands. Let's do this as a team. Let's that's what they're going with as far as the coaching staff and like the behind the scenes people. It's looking like they're trying to delegate more work and spread it around rather than just get one head coach. Okay, fix us. That's not what they're doing. That's why they just upgraded somebody that was already on the team because now he already knows what's wrong with the team, right? It's not like you need to bring somebody into the team and be like, okay, fix this. Oh, it's going to take me 3 months to fix this. No, they are already working on fixing it, and they were already fixing these things towards the end of the season. We saw some of these games where we're like, dang, Texans are the best worst team in the league, right? Like, so looking at all that, I see why they did that. However, if I'm ever in a situation like this, I've talked to many Texans fans about this situation. Nobody's happy. Nobody's really happy because, from like a fan's perspective, when people see this type of performance, it's embarrassing. It's, it's like, it makes you doubt like your fandom. It's like, it's those really, really grueling moments. It's like back in the day when the Vikings were 5-11, didn't last very long because we're perennially a good regular season team. But, when you're this bad for this long, it kind of like disheartens you, right? Like you don't want to go to the game. You're like, why would I go to the game and blah, 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 walk all the way there and blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of energy that's being developed right now. And towards the end of the season, we saw some possibilities. We're like, okay, they can beat certain good teams. They do have these X factors, and they might not show up in the form of a really good player, but they have good schemes. Like like you said, they're top 10 in turnovers, and that's literally what Lovie Smith has been doing his whole life, is just forcing turnovers, right? That's what they do. But then somebody could argue you can force a lot of turnovers when you're playing defense for that long, because their offense wasn't doing anything. So their defense is on the field always. So it's like you can force more turnovers that way. But yeah, all said and done, I see what they're doing. It's not something that I would do. I think I would probably start establishing, because they have that ability to do it. They can go fresh. They can go totally fresh. But yes, I think they went with the approach to like kind of delegate the stress level amongst all the coaches rather than just blaming it on one guy. And they just wanted to upgrade somebody that already knows what's going on. So I understand that. I get that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't know if it's going to make that big of a leap. But it was interesting to see how the end of the season was. And maybe they can kind of go off of that and make some big strides.
How do you guys think that this when going into making a decision like this, you think about the Texans, right? They're an expansion team. So how many years do you think like what 2006 was it 04 or 06
2001 I think, right?
Or was it 2001? Shit, yeah. I mean early 2000s, right? How many years do you think an expansion team has to go through without like whatever they demand is success, whether every franchise thinks a Super Bowl or bust in terms, or like consistency even for expansion team, right? Like either if you're not making the playoffs every year, but you're consistently winning games and it's, competitive and you're in the playoffs every other year or whatever. Houston, I mean, in their entire time as an actual franchise now, the Texans anyways, I can probably think of maybe 2-3 seasons max that they made the playoffs. I mean, again, don't quote me on that, but they have not been a competitive team for the most part, right? I mean, they've had flashes of really big great players, JJ Watt, like Deshaun Watson, Hopkins, all those guys, but like Andre Johnson, right? So
Arian Foster,
but like, where's the consistency been? Where at what point, again, it's been 20 years now, 20 plus years, do they just start to hit the panic button? Because in a sense you can, like you said, Shisho, they should, like logically it made sense to just, overhaul the culture, right? Because again, for the longest time, I feel like this team was just in a clusterfucker, like stagnant and not exceeding expectations, but also kind of just living as bottom feeders or like middle tier and being okay with that. But again, do you think the Lovie Smith hire is more so like a panic move, knowing that they're bringing in a guy who's at least, been to the Super Bowl, who's at least been coach of the year, who's seen success and that can help at least emulate that or try to bring that type of culture? Because if you do bring in like a fresh guy who's a first time hire, that could be another 4 or 5 years before you're competitive again. And again, are the Texans kind of hitting the panic button with this Lovie Smith hire?
I think it's overdue. It's like overdue to see some success. We haven't seen success for a while from the Texans. We saw some sparks of this Deshaun Watson stuff, but that just mitigated really quickly because of all of his scandal stuff. But yeah, I think it's like, like here's the scale, right? Here's Lovie Smith. Here's hiring a new guy. Hiring a new guy would probably move like this, Hiring Lovie Smith would probably make it a little bit more like this. right? Like they can see some immediate change because he knows the player personnel. He knows the responsibilities of the coaches. He knows all of that. So it's basically like this is like a 2.0 of last season versus bringing in a new guy. It's a 1.0 of a new season. So it's slower strive towards greatness. I think they just want to see something. I think that may be what they're trying to go with.
A lot of their problem happened with the whole Bill O'Brien situation too, right?
Yeah.
Like they were a good team when Bill O'Brien was a coach, and then they also made him the GM. He traded away DeAndre Hopkins. It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah,
it's just they've been an unfortunate franchise because of Bill O'Brien, and then the whole Deshaun Watson issue. JJ Watt leaves. I think they've tried to have the right things in motion, but then maybe delegated too many powers to the wrong resources.
Yeah, again, I think if you're heading in a direction where you understand that it's hard to win in the NFL, that it takes literally from like the ground up to build a foundation and roots, because at any point, if you put something in there that's poisonous or toxic or something, all of that you've built can literally just dwindle away. Even the Bill O'Brien thing, right? He was a veteran coach that they brought in. So the Lovie Smith hire, again, just seems kind of similar to that in the sense of like these guys have a resume. They're not coming on like a blank canvas or a clean slate. They have ideologies as a former coach that they can bring to the table. But I think, unless the Texans win relatively soon, they're going to continue this revolving door of bringing guys who are qualified, but they're not like blowing you out of the water. They're not like going to get the fandom super excited because it's like a completely new thing. Like, oh my God, like what's this going to look like? It's not like that, right? So it's just, I'm worried that this franchise is just going to continue this revolving door of mediocrity because they're so worried about the trust the process, the length it takes to build a foundation. Again, when you're expansion team, I don't know if it just comes with some added pressure because it's like the new kid at school where like there's been guys that are here for fucking since kindergarten now and we're seniors and you're like the guy that gets thrown into the fire and you're like needing to adapt quickly. So I don't know. I think that's kind of what made me a little bit really like when they thought Lovie Smith was the right guy for the job, but who knows? I mean, again, the Texans are probably just trying to put a product on the field that's worth watching, which again, credit to them towards the end of the season. It got there. So maybe, like you said, Shisho, because Lovie Smith was part of the team that was slowly getting there, you can just be like, hey, Lovie, we'll just prop you right in here and then we can continue that build.
Yeah, so, and he was a former coach of the year, right? So it's like, it means something. There's something there that they kind of see that, the general public just doesn't appreciate just yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, Texans struggling franchise, another franchise that was a total shit show last year. The Jacksonville Jaguars and their fucking start to the season with Urban Meyer. I mean, God, that feels like ages ago now. They had Urban Meyer to start the season. They fired him mid-season. They promoted Darrell Bevel, who was the interim, and then now they go with another familiar face, former Super Bowl champion, Doug Peterson, right? So Doug Peterson comes in here, ages pretty similar. Urban Meyer, 57, Bevel, interim was 52, Peterson, 54. But this is another similar to kind of the Houston Texans, in my opinion, in terms of hires. But here's why I think it's personally different is you're bringing in a guy like Doug Peterson into, God, again, we talked about the Houston Texans and how at the beginning of the year, they were putting a product on the field that was unwatchable. I mean, I'd say that the Jacksonville Jaguars were putting a product on the field that was unwatchable maybe 90% of last season. So a lot of that stemmed from Urban Meyer and his toxic culture and how probably that leaked beyond him getting fired. But you're bringing in a guy in Doug Peterson, again, who was coaching the Eagles from 2016 to 2020, had a year off last year, took that team to the Super Bowl in 2017 with Nick Foles as your quarterback, right? This is a guy that helped develop Carson Wentz. And we know who Carson Wentz is now. He's not even wanted in Indianapolis. And who brought a journeyman, a guy that literally could be bagging groceries at your local Kroger, in Nick Foles to win a Super Bowl. So this guy is deemed somewhat the quarterback whisperer. And now you're probably getting put into the best quarterback situation, at least from a possibility standpoint, that Doug Peterson's ever been, in a former number one overall pick in Trevor Lawrence, right? And I don't know if that's the reason. Again, I don't know if it's similar to the Texans where, God, they were so bad that they just need somebody who's done this before and had success to like just slowly start to get them out of this toxic nature. Or if it's one of those things where, again, the Jaguars are always panicking because they're the Jacksonville Jaguars and they struggle with the idea that it's going to take a 4, 5, 6 year build because they've just been so bad that they're like, you know what, here's a guy that's won before. We already got the number 1 overall pick last year. We're drafting first again this year, second, something like that. So there's pieces in play to help build this. And a guy that's already won, that has success with shittier quarterbacks, now gets a former number 1 pick.
Yeah, this is a great high. I think this is exactly what the Jaguars needed after that tenure with Urban Meyer. And
can you even call it a 10-year? God, that was so short.
It was, yeah, no, I guess not. It was a shit show, is what that was. And so he's coming. Doug Peterson's coming in with the same offensive coordinator that he had with the Eagles, Press Taylor. Also, the defense coordinator Mike Caldwell in this new coaching gig. So, this guy, I don't expect the Jaguars to come in and be like a team that's hot and just wrecking the league right off the bat. But he's going to be a coach that's been there. He's won the Super Bowl. Whenever the Eagles fired Doug Peterson, I was actually shocked. I'm like, how could you let this guy go who has led you to the promised land? And I think it was a lot because of the personnel with the owner and the coaches.
Yeah.
And he didn't have enough of say so and who to hire, who not to hire, which I fully expect the Jaguars to be able to provide him with that. Another thing is the offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, is the younger brother of Bengals coach Zach Taylor. So, I mean, if you want an offensive coordinator that probably knows what he's doing, I don't know if by siblings, I'm sure they share similar ideology,
or they don't because it's super competitive and they're like, "Fuck you, bro." Yeah.
Well, they're both offensive minded, so maybe there's something that rubs on them. But if I was a Jags fan, I would be super excited for this hire. So I think way to go, Jags. I give them like a plus on this hire for sure.
Yeah, I mean, going from freaking anything's an A plus. Okay. But yeah, I like this pick. I like this pick a lot. It's somebody that's defeated, like really good players in the Super Bowl. It's somebody that other coaches love. Like I've read into this and, all the coaching staff that he's ever worked with love him. Like they really like him because he gives them the freedom they need. He gives other coaches a lot of freedom and there's no animosity. There's no tensions when he's working. It's like it's a well-oiled machine when Doug Peterson's at head coach. And who doesn't like that, right? Like if you're sacrificing everything to be this special teams coach and Doug Peterson comes over here and says, "Hey man, you're doing a great job. Like I appreciate everything you're doing." Like that's the kind of energy, like even the special teams coach is going to put a little bit more effort just because he knows that he's being recognized for his work, right? It's simple human behaviors. Like these are the things that everybody should be doing, but not everybody does this. And Doug Peterson's really good at this. All the coaches, all the players that he's ever coached, they all love him. Like there hasn't been anybody that's like, "Oh God, Doug Peterson's a fucking asshole." Like it doesn't happen. And I think whenever you hire somebody like that, that's won Super Bowls, that you can't not hire that guy. Someone's going to hire him. I don't know why he hasn't been a head coach in the NFL for the last couple of years, but it was overdue. And I think what better place to start than having a quarterback that has all the skills that we've seen in college, but looks like a chicken with its head cut off in the NFL. He just needs like a little bit of, maybe some motivational speeches. I don't know what he needs, but he needs something. And I think Doug Peterson is that guy. So, this is a great hire. And I would also give this an A plus.
Yeah, he's not going to be kicking anybody, kicking the kickers and kicking the kicker and things like that. He sounds like a good.
That sounds like a joke. Like
that sounds like something you would make up. Like, oh yeah, my coach is kicking the kicker in practice. Like, what are you talking?
What are you
about?
doing?
No, that actually happened.
Yeah,
that's a real thing, and it didn't just happen in like football. It happened in the highest level of professional football possible, where you are vetted and like the resumes are like fucking pristine next to each other, and you're picking the best of the best. No, the coach that they hired kicked his kicker.
Yeah,
it's a real thing. So it can happen. You can like mess things up that badly and misconstrue interviews and like let people like give you the perception that they're ready for a job that they're not. So I'm with you guys. I think the Doug Peterson hire really, really fits the bill. I think it's really important. I think, and to show to hit on your point, I think it was just last year that he was out of the league, and I think it was because he didn't find a fit for a coach. So like, I don't think he wasn't wanted. I think he was waiting for the right opportunity, and I think this is like I'm pouncing. And like you said, Shovit, he's so well liked and loved, and he brought Press Taylor. He's literally bringing like his whole regime with him. It's like me and my posse. Oh, you want me? I got my offensive coordinator, my defensive coordinator, my special teams, literally lining up behind me, ready to go. Come on, guys. And so it's like
he's doing it for the homies.
Yeah, he's like I'm gonna get the bread, and my homie's gonna get the bread, and we're all getting the bread. So it's like a freaking Scooby-Doo.
What's that J. Cole line with the homies sitting in first class?
Oh God, I don't know.
That's okay. That's right.
We'll add that into this.
Yes, perfect. Soundbite, J. Cole. But yeah, I think this is going to be super important for Jacksonville. I don't know where Doug Peterson's going to take them, but one thing is 100% for damn sure that I can guarantee is he's going to leave it whenever his tenure's up a lot better than the way he found it. Because like you said, Shishod, they could have hired a dude off the street and it would have been an improvement over the shit show that they had last year. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited for Trevor Lawrence. Finally gets a guy who's going to probably empower him, not try to kick him in practice, like not try to do things that coaches should not do. So empower is, I think, the theme here. A lot of guys that can delegate and that have the ability to empower other leaders into being successful at what they do. Because the last thing you want is a micromanager, as we have learned. So Jacksonville Jaguars, the future is bright for you. The Vegas Raiders, another triage of head coaching change within the last year. So obviously they started the season with John Gruden. We all know what happened there. Then they had Rich Bisaccia come in as the interim, who did a really good job. I think he ended up earning a job somewhere else now, not as a head coach, but he did actually supplant, or like he got promoted to another position somewhere else. So happy for him. But who they bring in is 45-year-old Josh McDaniels, who obviously is a very, very household name in the NFL. He's been a Patriots offensive coordinator for the last 9 years, right? Under that Belichick era, like obviously under Tom Brady. He's got 6 Super Bowls as a former coach. Obviously, we know that he's had a head coaching stint as well. Back in 2009, the Denver Broncos hired him. But there was a lot of weirdness to that time. They had Jay Cutler was their quarterback, so obviously he came with a ton of baggage, and there was a ton of controversy there. And then I think there was some shit that happened with Brandon Marshall, where Josh McDaniels decided to bench him, and then the next year Brandon Marshall got traded. So he went 3-9, and then immediately got fired mid-season. So that coaching stint did not last long. Obviously, that's 12 years ago. So you have to believe that after that, and under the aura of Belichick and everything that he stands for and all that good stuff, and Tom Brady, he's learned a whole heck of a lot and is ready for this Las Vegas Raiders head coaching job. What do you guys think?
Yeah, first off, Rick Bisaccia, he's now the special teams coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, who very much needed that. We know how badly that was needed. So for them to take a guy who wasn't even the special teams coordinator at his previous job, that just probably got some IQ. Yeah. But in terms of Josh McDaniels, I mean, this guy, top 10 finishes 8 times in the league with the Patriots, including the number 1 ranked offense in 2007, 2012, and 2017. So, I mean, like, as far as you could say that was Tom Brady as well. It definitely was Tom Brady, but it's going to be curious to see. I'm going to be curious to see how he works with Derek Carr. Derek Carr definitely needs someone like this to, I guess, enhance his career. He's been sort of a mediocre tier 2.5 quarterback throughout his career. So I'm hoping that Josh McDaniels comes in and sets this offense and where it needs to go. They had a fairly good defense, I would say, last year. So I mean, anytime you hire someone from the Patriots, I would say, there's
optimism.
There's optimism. The future is bright for you. Although he hasn't had a good sort of track record being a head coach, with the Broncos, and then the Colts, he just kind of backed out last minute, I guess. But I'm curious to see how he functions in this new Raiders team.
Yeah, Raiders got really lucky with this hire. I wanted this guy like at the beginning of the off season, when things were kind of people were looking for new head coach. This was probably number 1 on my list for many reasons. Number 1, I mean, I'm going to tell you some reasons this is a good idea, and I'm going to tell you some reasons why this is a bad idea. Number 1, good reason, you come from a winning franchise, right? Like, who doesn't like people that are winners? They win all the time. Whether it's the Tom Brady factor, Bill Belichick factor, it doesn't matter. You come from that culture. You understand what it takes to win. You're part of that unit.
You're a robot.
Another reason,
I said you're a robot. You basically become a robot.
Yeah, I would love to be a robot. If I'm a winning robot, I would love to be that guy. And then another reason, it's not Bill Belichick calling the plays. He's still calling the plays. The plays that Tom Brady does, he's telling Tom Brady what to do for the most part. There are some times where Tom Brady does Tom Brady things. However, overall, the system is run by this guy. It's not Bill Belichick. It's a huge misconception that, a lot of people probably don't know. They just know the term Bill Belichick. And it's like Bill Belichick he does everything. He doesn't. He does not run the offense. He doesn't even call the plays. It's been him this whole time. It's been Josh McDaniels. So that's a huge plus, right? It's a huge plus. You're basically taking what's been working in the Patriots world, and you're like, let me just put that over here in the Raiders. Like, that's what they did, and that's a great move. It's a very smart decision with the quarterback that's, has the potential. I'm just going to leave it at that. And red zone success. There's a thing with the New England Patriots. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is besides Cam Newton. For like the last 7
Even Cam Newton,
right? But they're always finishing at the top end as far as red zone success goes. And now we know it's not just Tom Brady because players like Mac Jones, he even finished 7th last year in red zone success. So this is a system quarterback. There's certain things at play here that are beyond just Tom Brady. And, and he's going to be bringing that because the Raiders, they were ranked 22nd in third down conversion rate. And inside the red zone, don't even get me started. It was a shit show as far as the Raiders were considered in the red zone. There was Waller was like injured here and there. He was like a no-name for the late half of the season. It's time to bring in a real red zone offense person and delegate certain things that they need to do to accomplish this red zone stuff. Because let's get real. The Raiders don't have a bad offense. That offense isn't bad. They run it pretty well, right? So here's the reason why it could not work, and it's the same principle. They're getting a new GM also. It's not just a new coach. It's a new GM and a new coach, just like the Vikings. So it makes me wonder, do you want to go with don't fix what's not broken scheme as far as the Raiders offense goes? Because the Raiders offense wasn't really that much, incompetent. They were still competent enough in many ways. I just hope they don't come in trying to revamp the whole offense because that's going to, nobody wants to let's say I'm training and I'm training in one field and someone's like, oh, you did this for 3 years. You learned everything in this field. Let's just put you in a different field. Like, what? Dude, no. Why don't you just enhance what I'm learning right now? Right. So I hope they go with that approach because revamping the Raiders offense from scratch does not sound like a good idea to me. That's too much learning. That's too much taking a back step. And I think, he has that. I read some places that he has tendencies to do that whenever there's new players. He tries to kind of just like start from scratch, like my way or the highway. This isn't a nice person. This isn't like the Doug Peterson people that I was talking about. He's known to be stern. He's known to be like, this is how you do it. I don't want to hear how you do it. So, that brings a different kind of attitude. And when you have a new GM and a new coach and the coach is like, this is how you win Super Bowls. Yes, you should listen to that guy, but also this isn't like a Jaguar situation. This isn't like a Texans situation. This is a middle of the pack team. It's like they're pretty good sometimes. So I just hope for their own sake, they don't try to build up from scratch and he kind of has to like let go of his ego and just kind of like help Carr grow rather than turn Carr into Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Carr is interesting because I think he's due for an extension. Either it's going to be a big pay raise or whatever. I think
I think he just got it, didn't he? Or he's about to? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So
it's supposed to be like $40 million a year.
That's what the projection is. So it's just going to be a matter of whether the Raiders pick up his option and agree to pay that, or they try to trade him and he goes somewhere else. Now, obviously, with the hiring of Josh McDaniels, I think there is incentive to keep Derek Carr because, like you're hitting on, Shovit, at least I personally have always felt like there is another level to Derek Carr that for fucking the life of me, I cannot understand why we can't get there. I'm like, the talent's there. Like, the dude's a great dude. Like, he's a leader. Everybody gets behind him. Like, what is lacking? And I couldn't figure it out. So, this is a really interesting guy to come in and try to unlock that. But at the same time, if he comes in and thinks that Derek Carr is already who Derek Carr is going to be, this is another interesting spot for them to just move on from Derek Carr and try to find a quarterback of the future that Josh McDaniels can completely mold. So, again, they have two ways that they can go with it. And I think, Shisho, you were talking about the red zone thing. And it's even more evident in Cam Newton, right? Because Cam Newton's been dog shit. He's been dog shit, but where's the one place that he's excelled like the last season and a half? In the goddamn red zone, vulturing touchdowns. So what's Josh McDaniels done when he's had Cam Newton been like, hey, I know how to use this guy. This is all he's good for. So I'm going to put him in a position to succeed. And that's being adaptive. That's knowing the cards you have and knowing how to use them, right? He wasn't trying to get Cam Newton to be Mac Jones in the red zone. He was trying to get Cam Newton to be Cam Newton. So they were designing all the plays for Cam Newton to run. And that's the only place that Cam Newton saw success in the last 3-4 years. So I think that's also a testament to his ability to help this Raiders team be more consistent in scoring points in the red zone. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of this because I don't know the direction that the Raiders are going to head with Derek Carr. If they're bringing back Derek Carr, then I really, really like this because I think this can help unlock the next level. And yeah, I'm with you, Shishod. I don't think they're going to come in here. He's going to come in here and try to just like rip apart what's already kind of worked and build from the ground up. I think he's going to try to add on to what's already working. And the run game for what it was last year, for fucking many parts of the year, Josh Jacobs was garbage, but we talked about it a lot. It was their run blocking and their run blocking from their offensive line. So I think he's got to come in here. He knows that from the Patriots, his regime with the Patriots, what's the one thing the Patriots always had was impeccable offensive line. So hopefully he comes in and he's like, guys, I don't care what the hell we have on the roster. The one thing I know is we need a good offensive line. So start there. And then maybe try to help. Maybe that can help Derek Carr. Maybe that can help Josh Jacobs, and that can just help the offense as a whole. So maybe that's the missing element there. Hopefully it is, because again, I felt like I've yet to see Derek Carr at his peak, and maybe we've already seen it.
It's the Matthew Stafford. It's the Kirk Cousins. These are all the same person. They're just different people have different ceilings and different floors, but they're all in the same category.
Yeah, maybe Kenyon Drake gets the ball more often. Josh McDaniels like, we're paying this guy so much money. He's not getting the ball. And maybe you start utilizing him like it's the Stevenson and the Harris role that they used in the Patriots.
Yeah, very, very well, very well. But again, from where the Raiders started to how like the middle of their season with the Henry Ruggs, the John Gruden, like how it could have basically derailed into like, by the end of the year, like are the Vegas Raiders even staying in Vegas? Like I think you could have gotten that bad. I think Rich Bisaccia did a hell of a job to, get into that position with a team that literally is as discombobulated as possible with the head coach that obviously the situation that took place and gets into a position where they made the playoffs by winning their final game. Mm-hmm. And so I think McDaniels comes in and sees the second half of that season and sees what he's got to work with. And there's a lot to like there. So I think it'll be good. The direction for the Raiders hopefully is the right direction. I think a lot of people thought that with John Gruden and that wasn't the case. So let's get some stability with these teams. I think a lot of teams just are searching for stability and not a merry-go-round and a circus of coaches, because like you said, what player, Kirk Cousins being a great example, constantly gets thrown a different offensive coordinator, a different head coach, a different system to learn. Who the hell wants that? Who wants to learn something new every single year? Like nobody wants that, like especially when it takes multiple years to even perfect the one system you're already trying to learn. But every year you're like, all right, this is thrown out the window, here's something new. This is thrown out the window, here's something new. So hopefully the Raiders can get some consistency with McDaniels. They extend Derek Carr, and we see the next level, the Matthew Stafford progression that, in Derek Carr maybe. So anything else you guys got there?
Nope. Just stay out of prison, Raiders.
Yeah. I think they'll have a better job doing that now. The Miami Dolphins had an interesting offseason. They fired a coach that I think a lot of us were not really expecting to get fired. Brian Flores, just 40 years old, with how, I don't know, that with the way they started, the run that they went on, the way that they ended the season with, a lot of promise for the future. They fired Brian Flores. We later learned that there's a lot of stuff kind of behind the scenes in the locker room with the front office, all that stuff that, there's a lot that's going on, I guess. I think we lost your show there, but that's okay. Yep, I'm sure he'll hop back in here. I don't know if it's just his connection, but yeah, we understood obviously after Brian Flores got fired that he didn't sign that non-compete disclosure or whatever the disclosure was to not leak all the shit that was going on behind the scenes. So he's going to come out and talk about all this stuff. So we'll know exactly why he got fired. Obviously he's already landed a job again with your Pittsburgh Steelers, which if you're Chauvin, you have to be super excited about. That's a whole other story, but they replaced Brian Flores, get a little bit younger. They're like, you know what? He's only 40. We're getting younger. We're thinking younger. So we're going to go with a 38-year-old, and this might be the most interesting, the most, like, I have no idea what's going to happen, hire of the offseason for head coach. They go with Mike McDaniel, who is 38 years old. He was the San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator last year. It's going to be obviously his first time as a head coach, but beyond last year, Shovit, he was an offensive coordinator. Before that, he was just like a skills coach and like random coaches. So this is a guy that is now at 38 entrusted and given the reins to an entire NFL franchise with very, very little actual coaching experience. I mean, he was the run game coordinator. What's up, Shishot? Glad to see you back with us. He was the run game coordinator for the 49ers from 17 to 20, and we know how crazy that run scheme and that run game has been. So there is obviously some brains there. He's a history degree from Yale, so you got to assume the dude's smart, but very little coaching experience. Are you worried? Are you intrigued? Like, where are you guys at?
History degree?
Dang.
From
Yale. Like, why go to Yale if you're just going to get a history
degree? What are you doing in football, bro? What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the question.
Yeah, no, you do a history major so you can focus on football,
nice.
You don't have to.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly, right. No, I think this is such a unorthodox pick and by the Miami Dolphins, and I worry. I worry for Mike McDaniel because it's the Miami Dolphins. Although they had a pretty good year with Brian Flores winning 7 straight. This is a tough spot, but this is a guy that has kind of followed Kyle Shanahan everywhere he's gone. So you're basically getting a Kyle Shanahan prodigy right now with this guy. He gets hired. He's on his little private jet plane. He FaceTimes Tua, and they're talking like they're bros. Like he's not even. It's like, hey, bro, like we're gonna be amazing. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of the gist of the conversation. So in terms of what that locker room needed after Brian Flores basically calls out Tua in front of everybody and says, "You're a terrible quarterback. You suck." Like, why can't you be like Deshaun Watson? This is kind of like the right move in that direction. And he's hired the right assistant coaches to kind of mitigate some of those fears that people may have in terms of coaching experience. So some of the notable hires has been Wes Walker as a wide receivers coach, Patrick Surtain as a defensive assistant coach, Frank Smith as an offensive coordinator. So, and just what he did to the 49ers, he allowed them to be a top 10 offense last year. So that's huge. But going back to all these guys that he hired, the staff includes 300 years of coaching and 183 years on just like the NFL level. So, the biggest question was, can he get someone in place to be able to, our coaches, our offense coordinators and different people are going to be able to come to him and be like, yeah, I can get behind this guy, even though he's 38 years old. Like, yeah, he can be my head coach. There's a certain disrespect one may get when you're young, and he's kind of combated that, and he already has a plan in place. Step 1 is done. Step 2 is instilling that plan with his coaches and then and putting the product out in the Miami Dolphins. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very like unorthodox and different weird stuff going on, but I'm excited to see what they got going on.
Yeah, so how much I love Kyle Shanahan, right? You know how much I love this scheme. He's bringing the same scheme to a different team now. So now there's 2 teams running this Kyle Shanahan offense. It's called the wide zone scheme, right? Do you know how this works? So this is what they do, right? So they basically take a really, really fast running back. You have to have a fast running back. So you take a fast running back, you stretch laterally as much as you can, right? You take all your fat guys, you tell them to go sideways, and you make the running back also go sideways. You wait, and then you plant and go forward. Like, that is it. That is the wide zone scheme that Kyle Shanahan let this guy run there for so long, and he's bringing that same thing here. And it's the best. It's the perfect run formation. Like if they want to keep doing this whole, we're going to have a running identity. Like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to be that team, you have to be able to do this wide zone scheme. Otherwise, you're fucked. Like, you either progress with time or you get left behind, right? Like, these old guys doing these draws, doing these run up the middle 3 times. Like, it's a dead concept. When are people going to realize this? And I think this year, this Mike McDaniel hire is going to change the game as far as realizing what a running team looks like. Because there was a lot of questions like, oh, it's just the 49ers, like, nobody thought about replicating that shit somewhere else. Like nobody thought about moving it somewhere else and creating that as a new staple for a run game. And, I've been saying it for years. Like when you have three guys in motion in one play, and then you have a play going sideways, waiting for the perfect opportunity with the fastest of fast running backs, and just they go forward, like it's foolproof. It's a foolproof plan, and it's worked all these years, and it's going to work. It's going to work. This is going to be a successful tenure as far as the running game goes. It's just a matter of, can their defense hold other teams? Like, because the 49ers have always been known to have a good defense, just like all these other guys we mentioned so far. So I am worried, not even a little bit. Like, I am not even worried at all. This is going to be a successful offense. This guy brings a good culture, a good scheme, and he's young. He's young. He's worked with so many superstar coaches, so many players. He's gained all that knowledge, and he's still young. He's still going to improve, right? So we're talking the new age of football, and it's happening right here, right now in Miami. So I'm excited. I'm beyond excited for this team, and a team that's has all these running backs. They don't know what the hell to do with these running backs.
Myles Gaskin.
Myles Gaskin season, maybe. I'm not going to be that guy to draft him early. Someone else can take this risk. But let me tell you, if this works out, it's going to be a game changer for Gaskin's career, for whoever drafts him. So all I know is I am 100% sure this running scheme is going to continue flourishing in Miami.
Yeah, and I think one thing is important here as well is obviously there's the Brian Flores had a problem with Tua, but I don't know if the Miami Dolphins as a franchise have given up on Tua. It doesn't seem like they have. That's why Brian Flores is gone. So I have to imagine, in my eyes, I don't think Tua is going to be a amazing quarterback. Like, I think his ceiling is going to be, he's going to be an average to maybe slightly above average. And what did the San Francisco 49ers over the last 3 or 4 years show? They can sustain a level of success with a very average, mediocre quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Tua is literally Jimmy Garoppolo, but maybe slightly more athletic, because he's like the guy that gives off the perception that he's athletic and quick, but he's not really.
You're saying he's black.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, but he's also a lefty, right? So there's differences, but in terms of like quarterback skill, I think he's very similar to Jimmy G. So yeah, if he's bringing in the run scheme, if he's bringing in a system that lets average to maybe slightly above average quarterbacks thrive, there couldn't be a better fit for Tua. And like you said, Shovit, it's the polar opposite, and it's the best way to approach this new team is Brian Flores literally exonerated Tua and said, "You suck," in front of everybody. Mike McDaniel, as soon as he gets hired, he FaceTimes Tua. It's like, "Yo, what's up, dog?" So, like, again, completely different approaches, but he's doing all of the right things. He's saying all of the right things. The one thing that always makes me sticks out to me about Mike McDaniel is his interview earlier this year, where they talk about why, he's asked why the San Francisco offense is so successful. And I think I told you guys this before. Literally, he's like, it's very simple. We do what other teams don't do.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that as simple as you can break it down. What is everybody else in the league doing? Great. Let's not do that. Let's do something else. And so, like, the element of change, the element of surprise, the element of something different that people haven't seen, like, obviously to put that different thing, I guess to have it come to fruition on the field and execute the way you envision it, that takes skill. But for him to just think the idea of being different, like, that's not a unique concept. Everybody wants to be different, but how they become different is unique and can either be successful or just be a shit show. And I think with Mike McDaniel, he's shown that being different, being unique has led to this. Again, Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy we shit on all the time, but the 49ers are consistently competing. And so there's a reason for that. So I think he's fitting the system of having Tua in there perfectly. You talked about, obviously, the running game. Miami just has been so bad with the running game for over a decade now. Like, I can't think of the last decent running back they had. Maybe Ricky Williams. Like, it's been a while. So, like, they're not known for their running. So I think he's fitting, I guess he's fitting like a puzzle in two of the biggest places I'm seeing is the running game and how he meshes with the quarterback that they have currently, and that's Tua. So I'm excited for them as well. What were you going to say?
Real quick, a fun fact. I don't know if you guys already said this while I was interrupted, but you know how I think the last thing I heard was he follows Mike Shanahan around. He followed Mike Shanahan around too. His dad, Kyle Shanahan's dad, he was the ball boy for the Denver Broncos when Mike Shanahan was the head coach there. So he just like loves the Shanahans. So, again, I have no doubt this is going to work out beautifully.
Yeah. He's been around so many football geniuses. Mike Shanahan has his own prestige, and Kyle Shanahan that, I mean, it's at this point, it's almost like, dude, how did you not take away like important things from those guys? But yeah, again, very quirky, very unorthodox. Obviously, I'm sure like his videos have circulated with his interviews, the way he talks and stuff, the things he says. In the offseason, I was very intrigued as a Vikings fan about like the possibility of him being there, just because it's so unique and different, and that's what people are looking for these days. So if there's one thing for sure, the Miami Dolphins are going to be doing things that besides the 49ers, other teams don't do. So it's going to be interesting to witness and see, hopefully, a progression for that team as a whole. Our team should show the Minnesota Vikings had themselves an offseason. We finally relieved Mike Zimmer of his age 65 self in 1945 ways of thinking. Be like, dude, sorry, bro.
21-year-old girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's some things that he's progressive in thinking about, things about, and clearly it's women. So I don't know what his priorities are. But anyways, Mike Zimmer is gone. You are gone. Sorry, bro. Like, you're fired. They literally went 29, almost 30 years younger in 36-year-old Kevin O'Connell, offensive coordinator for the LA Rams, who have just come off a Super Bowl victory. Kevin O'Connell's story is insane, man. I mean, he was drafted in 2008 to be Tom Brady's backup, maybe possible replacement. Tom Brady retires this year, and this dude's already landing a head coaching gig in the NFL. So super interesting. From what I've when I watched his interview with the Vikings recently, seems incredibly intelligent. I think that what was really interesting to me is how similar his thought process and style of thinking was to the Vikings GM who they hired, Kwesi Adefo-Mensah. They both have such similar core values and visions in the way they approach football that it was almost like, holy shit, this is scary how excited I am, because it seems like a match made in heaven. And so to me, it's a 180, obviously, because we've also totally hired a new GM, head coach, offensive, defense, and a special teams coordinator. We're changing complete culture, yet we at least have a foundation or a core foundation of young to aging stars that have been, our core pieces for years and years, and now will be our core pieces for years to come. It'll just be interesting to see. Obviously, the biggest question for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins, and what the domino effect is going to be after that. If whether he stays and restructures, whether he gets traded and we get rid of his cap hit. But from a coaching standpoint, in Kevin O'Connell, I am insanely excited because obviously he's coming from that Sean McVay coaching tree, who stems from Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. So it's just like another small segment of the holistic Kyle Shanahan approach that it's impossible not to get excited about.
Yeah, anytime you bring a coach that has previously won a Super Bowl, you bring in that culture and sort of what sort of mindset you need to have as a team to get you to that next level. And he was a right-hand man for Sean McVay. The only thing is he wasn't the guy calling the plays for the Rams. Sean McVay still had the primary duties of calling every single down. However, he was in the whole process of designing the scheme, the game planning and teaching the players. So I think that in terms of the Vikings, what sounds, just speaking to you guys, and what they're trying to do is go younger, be able to collaborate with their players and have a better culture in that locker room. And someone that Kirk Cousins could mesh with. My understanding is that they are still, full throttle on Kirk Cousins. They're not going away from him. And so this is a good hire in terms of trying to get that collaboration with the quarterback and the coach, which was kind of missing all of Mike Zimmer's tenure. So it's a good hire for them.
Yeah. Anything could happen as far as players go. There's going to be a lot of changes. It's not going to stay like this. There's going to be a lot of changes in the next few months before, during the draft and after the draft and all that. So it's going to be hard to look at that, but you can look at what O'Connell brings, and that is a passing heavy attack. You know how people run to set up the pass? Well, he passes to set up the pass, and he doesn't even play action. He doesn't even want to entertain that there is a running back there. And that's all I've ever wanted. Since the day I was born, I probably came out of whatever saying, give me a passing coach, please God. And it's here. He doesn't He doesn't even like play action, man. Doesn't even care about play action. He throws to set up another throw. And if you watch the Super Bowl, which I hope you did, that was a huge formula for the Rams' success. Just their whole season. If you just look at it, they just throw to set up to throw. And they even, when the running back's involved, he's catching a pass from the quarterback. So it's like, yeah, they're going to run just to kind of keep things casual or whatever, but there is no run-heavy attack here. And that kind of scares me a little bit because that's all we've known, right? That's all the Vikings have been known for since Randy Moss retired.
It's the dawn of time.
Yeah, that it's a run-heavy offense. And, it's not going to be anymore. It just can't be because the ideologies this guy brings is just not the same. It doesn't mesh. It doesn't work. And, and he's like a pocket presence passer kind of a guy. It's just all signs point to not much running going on. And then I look at like mock drafts for next year and everything, and like they have Dalvin Cook at number 2, and I'm like, I don't know who's writing these mock drafts, but it's not going to be favorable from fantasy perspective. However, there's some other things that I like about him too, not just the whole passing attack thing, but he's the complete opposite of Mike Zimmer. He's just complete opposite in every sense of the word. He's a progressive guy. Mike Zimmer was just so gung-ho about his own mentality. He was all in his head. And then, like communicating with players. He's all about communicating with players. It's about communicating with people above him, below him, next to him to just make sure everything's meshing well versus Mike Zimmer was not doing that. There was a lot of animosity within the organization because of that culture dynamic. And yeah, he's going to be calling the plays now. He's openly said all that. Like, I think he's learned enough through McVay and everything. And I don't want to say he wasn't completely not responsible for calling the plays in Rams land, but he did his due diligence there. He learned what he had to do, and he knows what it takes to create this pass heavy offense. And I think now that he's calling the plays, there's no problems here. There's no issues with who the offensive coordinator is going to be. It doesn't even matter who the offensive coordinator is. They're going to have a completely different role than the role they've had during Mike Zimmer era. And the best part, he has a vision for the defense too. Like he's already like this guy is just. It's like this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like that's what this feels like. Like he's going with all these ideologies you want from a young coach, but he's like, wait a second, I'm not going to forget about defense. Like I have my own visions. Your head coach, like when you have an offensive-minded head coach like this, they don't really do anything as far as defense goes. You hire a very well-known defensive coordinator and you let that guy take reins. But he's like, and I quote, he's like, I definitely have a vision for what I want the defense to look like and play like. First and foremost, the core characteristics of playing good defense, which is guys flying around, a great tackling group. We're going to force turnovers. We're going to, with how we play from a scheme standpoint, but that's an effort thing. That's playing with great effort, sustaining that, finishing plays, making it about football. So there is no finger pointing from this guy. Like if you look at his history, like it doesn't do any of that. It's all about come together as a team. Let's figure out our roles and just maximize each person's roles. So, I think that's everything I got to say about it. It's just there's nothing to not be excited about. I was excited for all these other coaches, for all these other teams, but this is one of the perfect fit for Minnesota because, we could have gotten Mike, what's his name? McDaniel. We could have gotten him, but you know what that does? That reinforces that culture of running the ball. Like as much as I love that scheme, I don't want that. There's a huge dynamic shift that needs to be happening in Minnesota, and it is happening. It is happening now. It's happening from the GM standpoint, and it's happening from the coach's standpoint, and there's nothing to love, or there's nothing to not like about this decision.
You know what's funny about that quote about that you just quoted is I literally specifically remember Mike Zimmer saying he does not care if his defense creates turnovers. He's like, as long as we play sound football and we get stops and we force punts, we do our job. And I'm just like, bro, I want to punch you in the face. And so like everything that Mike Zimmer stood, it was funny because Kevin O'Connell almost was taking shots at Mike Zimmer, but not really. It was just blatant because of how everybody has conceptualized what Mike Zimmer tried to do and how unsuccessful he was. I'm not going to create turnovers. Kevin O'Connell's like, our defense is literally going to create turnovers. And literally one of the first things he said is he's like, I'm not going to hire another coach on my staff that doesn't know how to connect with their players. What was Mike Zimmer horrible at? Connecting with his players. So like, dude, Kevin O'Connell came in and took this job knowing exactly what it is the Minnesota Vikings lacked what they had in the past, why they went away from that, and what they're looking for. Again, this to me seems like a match made in heaven, specifically with the GM, specifically with the coaching staff that he's brought in. And dude, Cooper Kupp, all the success Cooper Kupp had, just imagine now what the possibilities for Justin Jefferson in this offense are. And the last thing, my favorite phrase that he uses, these Shanahan folks use, like it's become the new thing, the illusion of complexity. And what the illusion of complexity means is you're giving the defense the idea that you're doing something way crazier than what you're actually doing, right? And he went into detail about this. It's basically, and it's like so not like rocket science, but it's crazy that a lot of people don't think about this, or if they do, they just don't know how to execute on it. But it's basically having the same formation, but having 4 or 5 different plays and looks that you can give from the exact same formation, right? Because you have a base formation, and most teams have like one play, and then they have one audible that they can run audible out of that base formation. Well, what the Rams did last year, and again, he kept hitting on the fact that he was planning to bring everything that he learned and taught with the Rams here. What the Rams did and how they were so successful is basically, the things like Cooper Kupp. He was lining up in the slot. Cooper Kupp lining up in the backfield. Cooper Kupp lining up in the outside, right? They were doing things where they'd have Cooper Kupp line up in the backfield, and they'd have 5 or 6 different plays pre-snap that they could go to depending on what they saw the defense do. And this is the other thing. This offense gives so much more reins and flexibility and freedom to the guy running the offense, which is the goddamn quarterback, which for the last 4 years, we've seen Mike Zimmer basically not give Kirk Cousins any reins, right? You can't audible, like basically you have a bunch of scripted plays and what you see is what you get. Well, this is, again, like Shashot said, like I'm hitting the nail on the head. This is a 180 from what the Minnesota Vikings have been about the last 8 years. So that, I think, is what makes it the most exciting. And again, like you mentioned, Shovit, why wouldn't anybody want to hire a coach that literally the year before just won a Super Bowl in whatever position they were in? So again, to me, this is also a match made in heaven. I could not be more excited. I think it's also maybe just the ignorance or the idea that, again, this is going to be so different. Whether that different is just like downright god awful, who knows? Could very well be, but there's a good chance that it's not going to be. And if it is that bad, there's a good chance that there's a reason, because it's a process. It's not just because we have a coach that's not willing to adapt to the times. At least we know that this guy is collaborative, this guy's adaptive, and this guy's willing to do what the league is dictating in whatever, new age football we're in.
Yeah, to me, it seems like you guys have one of the best talents to not make it to the playoffs, and
100%.
It just seems like they were just missing that one. That I don't know what it was, and it seems like coaching may be that missing factor. So yeah, definitely something to be excited about when you have all the places already in place in terms of the field goes.
Yeah. So again, a lot of question marks for O'Connell. Who's going to be the quarterback? I mean, I know the reports are, and it's like every fucking day Ian Rappaport comes out and says the Vikings are going to stick with Kirk Cousins. But if as Vikings fans, we know more than anyone. We said the same thing about Stephon Diggs and traded him like literally a week later. We said the same thing about Percy Harvin, literally traded him. So a lot of times teams do that to help boost his trade value. So who knows what's actually going to happen, whether they keep him, whether they send him, whether they trade him, I don't know. But no matter who's at the quarterback position, we already know that our skill positions are pretty much set in stone from an offensive standpoint. There's just going to be a little bit of fine tuning with some linemen and whether we restructure some contracts. But like you said, Shovit, Kevin O'Connell comes into a situation that, to me, on paper, is not, from an offensive standpoint, is not very different than what the LA Rams literally looked like last year. So for that reason alone,
it's better than the Rams.
For that reason alone, how can you not get excited? Because the Rams literally just won a Super Bowl. So again, it's going to be super, super exciting. Change is always exciting, especially change from somebody who was not willing to change. I think makes it a little bit more exciting. So the future seems bright, and at least the blind optimism of change and something different is going to be something that we're excited about until we see the product on the field and what that's going to look like. So next head coaching hire. This one, to me, guys, is the most questionable in my opinion. The New Orleans Saints, obviously Sean Payton, Kevin James, whoever is the head coach there. Sean Payton. I just
saw that movie, by the way, at the barbershop. They were playing it at the barbershop.
Did you like it?
No.
That's too bad. It felt like it was a feel good movie. I liked it.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I also watched it. I watched it on one of my flights recently. And obviously you have to go into it knowing that this seems like a joke. Like I like took it with the sense that like, this is this like satire? Like, what is this? And I was also pleasantly entertained because I knew it was going to be really bad. So like there were things that were funny. And obviously as a football fan, it's just interesting. It's interesting to see how they shed light how with the clips, how they shed light on the whole bounty scandal, because like they talk about it, right? But it's just kind of, he's like, oh, it's a little complicated there. And like, they just kind of move forward with it. But nonetheless, football movie, like I'm always going to give it a watch, but for what it was, it was what it was, I guess the best way to put it. But nonetheless, Sean Payton, again, relieved of his duties. It's not like he was fired. His contract wasn't up. He just decided to step away from football. This seems like a short-term move. I think it's the situation where the roster's changing for the Saints. They don't have Drew Brees anymore. There's a lot of question marks there. So they've basically given the reins and the keys to the franchise to defensive coordinator from 2015 on, Dennis Allen, right? Dennis Allen's 49. He's 9 years younger than Sean Payton, but obviously he's defensive-minded coach. He was the Raiders head coach back in 2012 to 2014, but had an 8-28 record. So his one track record as a head coach in the past has not been great. And then he was the Saints secondary coach, again, on the defensive side of the ball during their Super Bowl win during the Bounty Gate scandal in 2010. So he does come with some winning culture, but I'll say why I'm a little skeptical about this is, we talked about how much of a genius Sean Payton is, right? We talked about like how there's very few people that have the offensive minds in this league, and Sean Payton's probably one of them. And that's the reason that, even after Drew Brees, they showed some level of success, with random people at the helm. But knowing that they had such consistency in Drew Brees for about a decade now, with a guy as offensive guru as Sean Payton, and they were only able to muster one Super Bowl, right? They were able to muster one Super Bowl, and now, like, they lost Drew Brees, they lost a lot of talent, they have like no names everywhere. Kamara's the only guy that they really have. They don't know who their quarterback is. So the glue that was holding this team together, in my opinion, was Sean Payton. So now that Sean Payton's gone, I think this seems like a easy hire, but I don't think it's the right hire. And here's why. Dennis Allen was their defensive coordinator from 2015 to 2021, right? The Saints have had a really, really good defense over the last couple of years. But I think my issue with this team is they're so deficient on offense that it was very, very important, at least to me, that they get somebody who's going to help an offense that is searching for literally a number one receiver, has no quarterback. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be. They need some consistency on the offensive side of the ball, and they lost the offensive guru on Sean Payton, and they got a guy who comes in with a defensive-minded track record with an offense, to me, that's in complete disarray. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who he delegates, how they delegate, whoever the offensive coordinator, or what level of reins is going to happen on that side of the ball. But our concern this year also was with the Saints was the offensive side of the ball. So you're hiring a defensive-minded coach who is already with the team to fill that position. So I'm very, very skeptical on this. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, so to me, your best case scenario is you have Sean Payton and Dennis Allen as your defensive coordinator. You're going to lose Sean Payton for sure, right? And you just don't have the personnel in the quarterback position. Like, you've got Jameis Winston, obviously Taysom Hill, like, who's not going to lead you to a Super Bowl or anything of that sort. So you just don't have the pieces in the quarterback position to make a run. But the thing is, like, I don't think that I would blame the coaches for that. Here's why I think this is a good hire for the Saints. When Sean Payton was, he decided to retire, Dennis Allen, I'm sure, went to the owner and said, I want to be the coach of this team. If they said, no, we don't want you to be the coach, then he's going to get hired somewhere else, like, real quick. I mean, this guy, his with the Saints defense, they're on a 22-game winning streak of not allowing a 100-yard rusher, right? And they've ranked top 10 in yards per game in the last 2 years, and top 5 in points per game. And so this defense has been their bread and butter for this team. So what they need to do is fix their offense. And I'm not convinced that having a new offensive coordinator fixes with that personnel that they already have. They actually just need to go out and get a new quarterback, because what they have isn't working. So I think that they didn't want to lose what already they have established in that defense, and then maybe hire the right offensive coordinator, go out and get a quarterback potentially in free agency or draft to make your team better is probably what the idea that they try to get on. And I think that's smart.
Yeah, there's I don't mind this hire. I don't mind this hire only because before he came into the team in 2015, they were like allowing the second most yards in the league. And as soon as he came into the team as a defensive coordinator, they became a household defensive name, and they have been since then. And there's two ways to look at this, right? There's the Shovit way of looking at it, like you just mentioned. They have something good there. Why get rid of that, right? Like, why get rid of that defensive powerhouse? Why not just add that defensive coordinator or the offensive coordinator? Because at the end of the day, these are just titles, right? Like, you don't know the delegation. You don't know what really goes on. You know some of it, but you don't really know who's in charge of how much of things. So if you can hold on to that defensive coordinator, give him a what's it called, an upgrade, make him your head coach, pay him more, whatever, because he deserves it, and then just hire an offensive-minded coordinator. Yeah, that's one way of doing it, and I think that's the approach they're choosing. There's the other devil's advocate way of looking at the situation, and that's you're already good at defense, right? You're already good at defense. You've already have this method. It's not like he came in 2 years ago. He's been here for half a decade, right? So the philosophy has been engraved into the team. There's other people that probably know the same things he knows as far as how to handle that defense, right? It's not just him at this point because it's been happening for more than half a decade. So this is like an identity of theirs. That means it takes a lot of people to kind of establish things like that. That's where you get the anyways, I'm not going to digress, but so you could just keep that defense the way it is. You kind of know the philosophy of the defense, and then you could just hire an offensive-minded head coach to drastically improve that offense, because that offense is not going to take you anywhere. And you mentioned Kamara, Sweekar, but Kamara might not even be playing next week because of all the Las Vegas stuff.
Yep.
Noted, never go to Vegas. I have still not gone to Vegas, and I might not until I see some positive things in Vegas.
No, they just don't have a team in Vegas either. That's why I was a huge advocate for that.
That's true. Don't play sports in Vegas.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's two ways of looking at it, and I don't think either way is bad. But as somebody that I've had to make decisions like this in like Madden franchises and whatnot over time, and I always tend to go the approach of drastically changing something that's so bad. Like, that is the first approach, rather than sustaining what's really good and slightly trying to improve what's really bad. I go with the drastically improve what's really bad and then try to sustain what's really good. And that's not the route the Saints went. So I'm intrigued to see what this offense is going to look like. I'm intrigued to see, and do they even have a lot of like draft capital? Do they even have a lot of, just financially, are they even available to get a lot of good players? I'm not too sure.
The Saints, well, I can tell you, Shishot, the Saints have the shittiest cap space heading into the next offseason. That's why Sean Payton was like, you know what? I see this situation. I'm out.
Okay, so that's the biggest fear of mine, is like enhancing this defense, sustaining this defense. But what about this offense that's going to take you nowhere? And you just lost your best player to probably a lot of allegations, out for 8 weeks, probably minimum. So a lot of red flags here. This is my hire that I'm questioning the most so far. It's a solid hire from the standpoint that they want to feed off of this defense and try to improve this offense, but you can't improve something that's trash. You can't improve
so
that.
Bad.
You need to have a certain level of certain foundation to improve upon it. They need to build an offense.
Yeah.
How are they going to do that? I don't know, and I'm not sure if I'm not sure if this was the route they needed to take, but they took it, and at least we know their defense is going to be solid.
Yeah. Again, that's the thing, is like, he was already there. I don't know that he was like hell-bent and gung-ho on finding a head coaching job. I honestly don't know if like the Saints weren't going to offer him a head coaching job and they're like, dude, just stay as a defensive coordinator. You've been crushing it. If he would have started proactively looking for other head coaching jobs, because again, his defense has been phenomenal for 7 years now. I'm sure he's gotten head coaching offerings now. I don't know if that's a testament to him just wanting to stick it out with Sean Payton while he's been there. I don't know what the story is, but I have to assume that his track record for defensive success has warranted other offers to be a head coach over the last 7 years. but he's taken none of them. So I don't know what the reason behind that is. I just think, again, when you paint the picture of two sides to show, I'm also of the opinion that like he could have just stayed as the defensive coordinator and been like, dude, we'll give you a pay raise, but your defense is so stout. We don't want to do anything to mess with that. We have an offense that's not even coherent, that like, again, we don't even have a foundation for it. There's nobody to build around. So we need somebody to start a foundation to build upon. And I don't know if a defensive minded guy that can just totally delegate to an offensive coordinator, we've seen how that can work if there's not the level of empowerment that offensive coordinator needs to make those decisions. So again, it seems like a forced hire. It seems like an easy hire. It seems like, oh, this is the natural next step hire, but I don't know if it's the right hire, specifically pointing to how just awful that offense looked. And I think they need a ton of help. The cap space isn't going to help them. It's going to have to be like, we have to hit on some draft picks.
That's the biggest problem for me.
They're going to have to hit on draft picks. They're going to have to unload a lot of maybe aging old stars that are due a lot of money. And they have to really look themselves in the mirror and be like, the cap situation and our offense is not going to give us the ability to be as competitive as maybe we would hope this upcoming season. Let's start to unload some, players that we have to pay a ton of money to because, we need to build some draft capital. We need to get rid of some cap space. And so all of that to say, I think they could have hired somebody who was going to do like from the ground up legwork and kept Dennis Allen on the defensive side of the ball because the roster doesn't give them the ability, at least from an offensive side of the ball, to compete right away. Like this is going to have to be a project. This is going to have to be a build unless a big name quarterback agrees to like get traded to the Saints. You get like a Russell Wilson, somehow Aaron Rodgers, like something like that happens. This offense, there's just not a way for this offense to be where it needs to be competitive. So again, it questionable to me. Obviously there's the camaraderie there. Obviously he knows the Saints, he knows the organization, the franchise, that ability to be like, we hired within, we promoted within. I know there's something to be said about that. So, we'll see, but I still think there was a better way to go about it, but that's why I'm not a GM, or that's why I don't make those decisions. So, whatever. Guys, the New York Giants, the shit show Giants last year, Joe Judge was fired. He was only 40 years old. So, they tried the young route, but it wasn't the right young route. They have now hired 46-year-old Brian Dable, who was the Bills offensive coordinator for the last 3-4 years. That offense that's completely been revamped, that looks scary as hell. The development of quarterback Josh Allen. So all of that is the resume that Brian Dable brought to the table that landed in this head coaching job. He's a first-time head coach. He has been a 5-time Super Bowl champ with the Patriots. He was their wide receivers coach. He was their tight ends coach. So skill positions he has excelled at, and those teams have won Super Bowls. So again, here's a guy that's young enough, that's established a winning culture in whatever scope he's been given the ability to, and he's thrived. And again, we've seen a Bills offense and team that has been like, the Bills Mafia disappeared for, about a decade. And after the Josh Allen draft and over the last 4 years, like there's been a resurgence, and Brian Dable was a key piece to that resurgence. So, what are your guys' thoughts here with the Giants picking Brian Dable?
Yeah, they just basically needed a whole new revamp of what their organization is all about. They went and hired a new GM who was also the assistant GM for the Bills, and then they hire Brian Dable, who was the offensive coordinator. And I think that maybe this is what helps Daniel Jones from where he's at currently. I mean, it's just injuries have riddled him throughout his career, and he just hasn't been met his potential and been what we've expected Daniel Jones to be when he was first drafted. And so, if anything, this is probably going to be something that makes Daniel Jones more attractive to trades later down the line. And maybe they can figure something out as far as getting better market value for him, because right now I don't know who wants Daniel Jones. So I think this is a long-term play. This is a good look for the Giants that needed a complete revamp and a better offensive strategy, because they've just been poor in all fronts of their team.
Yeah, I absolutely. This team needed an offensive coordinator to be their head coach more than anybody else. And they got it. I don't know if you guys, I think Sweetheart just mentioned it, that he did coach for the Patriots. So that makes him a Bill Belichick tree person, not a Kyle Shanahan person. So, he's learned some things from bigger named coaches. And he also, when he was, when he was coaching in Alabama, he was coaching Jalen Hurts and Tua and all those guys. That was their coach. So, he has some rep to having this dynamic style offense. He does not do this traditional sit in the pocket and wait for your things to happen and throw the ball. He very much believes in running with the quarterback. And, in this day and age, if you can execute that properly, that is the move. That is where things need to be going, right? And he completely understands that. He came from a Bill Belichick tree of putting people in the pocket and just letting things happen, to going to college and realizing the potential of all these young players, to coming back to the NFL and being like, hey, Josh Allen, it looks like you can make some running things happen. Let's do that all the time. So and a lot of people were comparing, the linear speed of Josh Allen and how the New York Giants, what's his name? Daniel Jones, he's actually faster in linear speed, right? So he's obviously not the same body type. He can't handle those hits and whatnot, but he's a big dude. He's like a Big Ben. He's like a Big Ben with a lot of speed. So he can make things happen. This is the perfect coach for this guy. It's just meant to be, and it just happened to just fall into his lap. With Daniel Jones, we've seen signs of, oh, wow, that was a cool play. And we've also seen Daniel Jones fumble the ball two times every game for the rest since he came to the NFL. So there is room for tweaking, and there's room for to see his full potential. And if Dable can't do this, nobody can. So this is going to be an experiment, because he's coming from having a Bills team with high-powered offense, coming to absolutely nothing of a team as far as offense goes, with all these injuries and question marks here and there. So, but that's the kind of player they needed. That's the kind of coach they needed to turn this around. And I think we're going to see heaps of changes coming to this New York offense, and we're going to see that Daniel Jones will be a viable fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I think you have to be excited, obviously, because like we said, we've seen flashes from Daniel Jones, but there's been so much. I feel like there's been more bad than good, but I just think he hasn't been able to maximize the good, or the coaches haven't been able to help him maximize the good. And like you said, for a guy that, coming into his career in the NFL early on, and Josh Allen, there were a lot of question marks about him. Nobody thought he was going to be.
He was actually bad. Josh Allen was actually bad.
Huge accuracy issues, and so seeing how much he's progressed, and now he's top 5 best quarterback in the league. It's insane to think that obviously Daniel Jones is not that good. I think we all know that, but he can be so much better. He can at least play better. He can be in a position to succeed better than he's been thus far. So it'll be interesting to see again if Brian Dable can at least get that out of Daniel Jones, or at least find out that maybe he's not the answer and then move on and try to build from there. So at least we're not going to see this Giants team in no man's land where it's like, Saquon, what are you doing? Like, Daniel Jones, what are you doing? There's no receiver ever healthy on the field. So Evan Ingram's just dropping passes everywhere. Like, that offense was a shit show. So they needed somebody like this. Like you mentioned, I think this is a really, really good fit. I'm interested to see how quickly he realizes if he can unleash something or unlock something in Daniel Jones, or he realizes that there's nothing to be unlocked and we need to move on as quickly as possible. So we'll see what direction they head. But for the Giants, they really, really needed something like this. And so it's kind of more like a sigh of relief. Like, thank God, like we got something that's not going to, put us into another 4 years of like, we know where this is headed. This is the first time that there's some optimism in the future. That's it. Those are the 8 teams that had head coaching vacancies and now have filled all of those positions. Obviously, this is all speculation. Who knows how any of these guys are going to, treat their players, whether that's going to lead to wins on the field, what kind of schemes, all that stuff. That's what, speculating is all about. But do you guys have one team that you think is going to see the most immediate success next year, and the one team that you think is going to actually regress?
I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are going to make immediate changes.
Positive?
In a positive way. And I'm going to go with the Texans. There's not much going on there. I hope the best. If Deshaun Watson ends up playing, yes, they might make the playoffs. If he doesn't end up playing, Mills, it was nice to meet you. Have a good rest of your life, but not sure if it's going to be in football. I don't know. I have no idea. But there's not enough information or player personnel there for me to be like, this team just needs that one spark and they can go far. I can't openly say that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the Texans as well. I mean, they've only they just hired within, got their defensive coordinator, Lovie Smith, not a lot of changes. Things are probably going to be, the defense is going to be the same. Unless they get some other free agency hires, I don't think a lot is going to change on that team as far as wins and losses goes. But I think the best chance is going to be y'all's Minnesota Vikings. I think that, like I mentioned, like there's all these players in place to have a successful season. They're missing in being a little bit more progressive in the offense, and now you have a coach that can allow you to do that. I think the sky's the limit for the Minnesota Vikings.
Makes me happy to hear you say that, Shovit. I didn't want to be the homer and be like the Vikings. But I personally, I think so. My question was, who do we think is going to progress the most or regress the most, right? The Texans only won 4 games last year. I don't know that they have much regressing that can be done. So I don't know that they're going to I think they could be the same, but I still give Lovie Smith the benefit of the doubt to be like, even if this team only wins 4 games again next year, there's at least an identity where, they didn't have one with David Culley. I'm looking at the Denver Broncos, and the Denver Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett, even if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, they are in the market for a quarterback. They absolutely are. That's known, right? So they could trade for Kirk Cousins. They could bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. They could, get Russell Wilson, or they could draft a quarterback. I think that team is literally a quarterback away from being really, really scary. And now they have an offensive-minded coach to help get them to the promised land, to finally unleash those receiving weapons that constantly are underrated. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. I mean, I've been raving about Tim Patrick all last year. So I'm excited to see my boy Tim Patrick finally get to eat, but it's going to happen with a quarterback that's at least coherent and not Drew Lock. And Teddy Bridgewater's a free agent, so I don't think it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. So to me, the Broncos, contingent or not contingent, I just think they're going to see tremendous strides. Hopefully they get that quarterback and that missing piece, and that team's, almost looking like a Super Bowl contender. My biggest regression, I think, is going to be the Saints. I already talked about it a little bit. This team with Sean Payton, with that fucking awful offense, scratched and clawed their way to the 7th seed last year in the playoffs. Or did they make the playoffs as the 7th seed, or did they just barely missed out?
They missed out.
They just barely missed out, but they were so close to making the playoffs, right? So I think the natural trajectory of this team with Alvin Kamara question marks, they have no quarterback. It's a coach that's defensive minded, not really fixing the offense in the short term. I think the only place for them to go, at least next year, is down. So the team that I see making the biggest regression next year is going to be the Saints, because they they don't have the personnel, they don't have the cap space, they don't have enough draft capital, and the one player that was at least a staple for them is, has all these off-field issues now, so he may not even see the field for much next year. So to me, the Saints, the biggest regression. I like the Denver Broncos as the biggest progression. But it'll be interesting. I think that's what speculating is all about. That's what the offseason is all about, because what can we do when there's no actual football? We can speculate. Anything else you guys want to talk about with these coaching hires?
Yeah, fun fact. I don't know if I already mentioned this, but with the Nathaniel Hackett hire that the Dolphins did, the 49ers get
the Broncos?
Dolphins?
No, sorry, not Nathaniel Hackett.
Mike McDaniel.
Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel hire. The San Francisco 49ers get 2 third-round picks.
Because he's a minority.
Yeah. So I think his mom is black, his dad is white, or vice versa, one of those things.
Yeah, his dad's black.
Dad's black. Okay, so third round pick for this year's draft and a 3rd round pick for next year's draft, which I thought I did because of the Rooney Rule. I had no idea about that until I was researching.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's right. It's like a cheat code. I would just keep hiring minorities.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the devil's advocate side of it, is people can just keep doing that, but they're not hiring the right person for the job. They're just getting the extra compensation and draft picks. It's like we can literally get 2 third-round draft picks. Like, besides the Vikings, most people think third-round draft picks should see the field. So I'm pretty sure they're contributors in the short term. So that's going to be that. I mean, again, good for them. But Mike McDaniel, put him on my list of biggest question mark in terms of the sky is the limit, but also, dude, maybe this guy just wasn't meant to lead a football team. I don't know. I'm so on 2 sides of the coin with Mike McDaniel, but it's intriguing nonetheless. There's going to be a lot more to talk about in the offseason about all this stuff. I think, we're going to try to bring episodes about we'll obviously do a mock draft for the NFL draft that's coming up. We'll do a mock draft for fantasy football that's coming up. There's so many free agents that we got to talk about as free agency opens up. I mean, big dates that I've listed on here, guys. Beginning February 22nd, you can start designating franchise tags to players, and we can talk a little bit more about that in the next episode. March 1st starts the NFL Combine, so that's when you're going to see so many guys' draft stocks either rise or drop. Right now, there's no quarterback that's supposed to be drafted in the top 10. Well, you bet your ass there's probably going to be a quarterback that gets drafted in the top 10 just because some team is going to reach. Some team is going to like what they see in the Combine. And so, and then obviously March 16th is when free agency period and the new actual football season starts. So obviously further down the road, you have the draft April 28th, April 4th, you can start reporting to practice for teams that had a new head coach, which this is weird. I didn't know this. Did you guys know this? April 4th is when teams that have a first-year head coach get to report and begin their offseason programs. April 18th is when teams who have returning head coaches get to start beginning their offseason program. So new head coach, yeah, we give you 2 weeks to figure that shit out.
Nice.
So two weeks a head start compared to the other teams. So big dates. Obviously, we'll try to bring you guys still weekly content. We want to do the draft. We want to do the free agents. We want to talk about all that good stuff. Do you guys have anything else to touch on?
No, dude, you got me so excited talking about all these dates and off season. This was in Madden. The off season times is one of my favorite times. I know the gameplay is great, but like the draft and all of that stuff that you have to do, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, dude. Now that we're molded and engraved into football content, there is no shortage of content in the off season. Again. Thank you guys so much for sticking through the season with us. Hopefully we can bring you so much more enjoyable content in the off season. I'm Sweetcar. We got Shovit, Shishot. We're the only playbook, guys. We'll see you next week.